those of us who can work online, who work in the tech and startup world, are exceptionally privileged. You know, we either have the education and the skills to do this, or we have had the experience, like we've earned the skills to be able to make a career at this. And that gives us so much freedom. We can design our own lifestyles.
We've all seen those wanderlust pictures of people sipping a smoothie by an infinity pool with their laptop in hand with #office goals. Who hasn't seen these pictures and been inspired, if very envious, of the elusive digital nomad lifestyle? But how do you make that happen? And is it really as dreamy as it sounds? Our guest this week is the wonderful Lily Bruns. Having lived and worked in the startup world in Thailand, the US and UK, Lily is now the country manager in Thailand for Draper Startup House, a collection of co-working and living hostels for travelling entrepreneurs, freelancers, startups, and anyone living the digital nomad lifestyle. Lily and I chat about the realities of this elusive lifestyle, how people wanting to escape their corporate safety net can find freedom and fulfilment, and the hard questions you need to ask and skills you need, as well as what the future of work and travel looks like, particularly post-COVID-19. If you've got the urge to not go back to your 9-to-5 office life and wondering what another more adventurous path looks like, you're going to love this episode. So without further ado, let's get started. Lily, how on earth are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Katie. Tired. It's been a long day. I guess you're starting your day, huh? I'm wrapping up mine as it's 7 p.m. over here in Thailand.
Nice, nice. And how is life in Chiang Mai in Thailand at the moment?
Good. I am keeping myself super busy as we're trying to launch the new Draper Startup House Chiang Mai. And so busy is like the state of being that I enjoy being in. So it's really great for me. But, you know, I think, global pandemic, we're in the hospitality industry, no tourists coming in, uncertainty about what the next couple months are going to bring is not ideal. But personally, I'm feeling pretty good about things.
Yeah, that must have been not an ideal situation, obviously. Like, how have you, what have you had to kind of like change, adapt of like, yeah, how have you coped with the pandemic?
I think for myself personally, it has been okay. Like for the business here, I joined the team in February with the aim of launching a space this year. And so we had a goal of finding and setting something up by October. And so we're still able to be on track for that. No problem. I think I personally had some difficulties with like being an extrovert stuck in my house when we were sort of like in self-isolation, quarantine. That was like a huge challenge. But now that we're out and about again and I get to be, busy doing shit, I'm perfectly happy. I think for the rest of the team though, because we have Draper Startup Houses all over the world and have been in the process of like launching several of them and like relaunching spaces and managing renovations. And so we had literally opened our doors in Lisbon for like a day, had like a launch party, like, yay, welcome to the space. And then it was like, okay, now everything has to be closed. No hostels can be opened. And like a similar situation in like Manila, we'd invested a bunch in like creating like a 7-story space there. And then with everything going down, it was just like, oh no, you cannot function doing the business plan as you expected. Like, figure it out. But I think our team is really awesome. Like, people figured out some smart solutions for what to do, sort of how to pivot.
Yeah.
And switch things up to try to deal with it. Awesome. I'm so sorry. My cat is not okay with sharing attention right now.
I understand. I saw you have like an Instagram for your cats, right? Like work versus
You
cats.
found my Instagram for my cats? Yeah, I haven't been active for a long time. But yeah, that's work versus cats. And I used to work from home, and so my cats were all but my like shiz all the time. But now I'm mostly just in the space as like working with the team. So I'm actually like taking this call right now from my office, which has been like largely unused for the last month and some.
I need some work versus pets tips, having just got a puppy and struggling somewhat to balance trying to be productive with having a gorgeous little fluffy pup to play with. I'm finding I'm having to kind of like work in sprints at the moment while he's napping. So it's like he falls asleep and I'm like, go, go, go.
Right, just use that as part of your pomodoros, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think doors are the only trick. You just have to set clear physical boundaries.
Yeah, I need to do that. I'm too soft, I think. Cool. So talk to me a little bit about you've kind of traveled and lived in quite a few different places like Thailand, US, UK. How has that shaped your, I guess, experiences and what you're doing today?
Yeah, well, I guess like from the very get-go, I was destined to be international. My dad was in the Peace Corps, and he met my mother in Thailand, and so I was always going to have like those two heritages to sort of be a part of my life. And I was actually born in Indonesia, but I only lived there until I was like 18 months old, so don't have any like particular affinity. But lived here in Chiang Mai through the age of 12 when my family decided to move to the US. I think my parents wanted my sister and I in like the US school system. So I thought it would be, give us an advantage. And so I stayed there specifically in Florida through college. But then I graduated and I wanted to go out to the world. So I decided to come back to Thailand. And so I was here for a couple of years, sort of, getting started with my career before I decided to go to graduate school in London. And so I moved there to go to Imperial College Business School. I guess I was in like 2013, if I'm getting my own timeline right. And stayed there for a couple of years, really loved being in London, but like the job visa situation didn't work out. So I moved to New York after that. I was like, okay, I want the big city feel. I want to continue doing this whole startup life thing. But then I couldn't hack it more than 9 months. It just like completely burnt out. And I was like super miserable and riddled with anxiety. And so then I end up and figuring another pathway out for myself, exploring new lifestyles.
Nice. And then you came back to Chiang Mai?
Yeah, sort of after New York, it was a lot of transition. I was taking care of my family's bed and breakfast in Virginia. So I was like living in this like house that's been in my family for like 150 years in the mountains of Virginia. A really, really beautiful place to be, but like quite remote. But then I was also like working remotely for a legal tech company as sort of like a side job. And I had been coming back to Chiang Mai a lot, even after I left, I always came back to visit and like maintain ties here. It's also always been a place that I've loved to be. And yeah, I kind of realized like, oh, hey, well, I have a job that's like remote, so I can get paid in USD to do work that I like enjoy, but I could live in Thailand. And I kind of discovered like that digital nomadism was a thing and that my hometown was a hotspot for that. And I was like, oh, well, let's give this a try, shall we?
It's kind of like a slightly ironic discovered digital nomadism, but then ended up coming back home again.
Yeah, it is just really funny. It's super convenient for me though, that like, because it's great. Like, I've got like roots here. I've got a community. I speak the language. I don't have to worry about a visa. So
yeah,
all good.
And how does your experience of having seen different cultures and maybe, like you spoke about, the culture in New York was obviously very kind of crazy, obsessed with work, super kind of hustly culture versus, I assume it's a little bit different where you are now. Like, how has that exposure to different cultures formed how you are as a person?
Yeah, well, I think growing up, with a mixed heritage, I think you kind of like live on the edge of both worlds. Um, you know, to Thai people, I was always like a lukrung, I was like a farang. I was, kind of like, oh, well, your dad is foreign, so you're kind of a foreigner. But then when I moved to the US, I was like, oh, but like you're Asian, right? You kind of get othered. But I think
Yeah.
that combined with the fact that I was like an awkward child, like a very socially awkward child, much more comfortable with books than I was with people. Um, I sort of, yeah, just kind of wasn't, when you're a bit of an outsider, you see things differently, you know? And that can be an advantage. I studied anthropology, and so there's this concept of like participant observation, like you immerse yourself in the situation, but you yourself are an outsider, and so you bring a certain perspective. And I kind of realized, like, I was doing that my whole life because I was not 100% immersed in Thai culture. I had another perspective with which to look at situations, and vice versa as well. I didn't grow up in the US my whole life, and so there were certain things that people would take for granted. And I was like, well, no, this doesn't have to be the way that it is. And I think that's the brilliant thing about travel is it forces you to get out of your comfort zone, to challenge your expectations and assumptions. And I think that's why it can be like so great for creativity and for like entrepreneurship as well, because you can approach things from a different perspective. If everything around you is the same, how are you supposed to imagine something new or better? It's when you have the opportunity to like compare and contrast that you can really start to imagine something new.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's like, it's kind of the same as like, it's why diversity is so important, because you get those like different viewpoints and different perspectives. Like otherwise you could just end up with the what's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah.
What word? You know what I mean? Groupthink.
Yeah.
That's the one. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, that definitely happens still when you travel. It's something that you kind of have to like guard against. At DSH, we kind of we're trying not to use the word like-minded in our branding. We're experimenting with using diverse-minded, and I think it's interesting because like often I hear people in the digital nomad community sort of use the word like-minded. That's a word that the community has chosen for itself. People are just like, hey, I'm looking to meet like-minded people. Is there a meetup or a good co-working space? Blah blah blah. But yeah, why travel to the other side of the world just to find more people who are exactly the same? But when you are traveling though, you kind of like you do need something to like bond yourself to other people. You are looking for what you do have in common. So I think there's a lot of different like interpretations of that.
Yeah, I love that. Saying like-minded is just something that you say without really thinking about it, but actually once you think about it, it doesn't really make sense. So talk to me about the kinds of people that you cater for at Draper Startup House. Like I think to the outer world, people have this perception of digital nomads as like, people who are Instagramming their smoothies in Bali and like sitting on their laptop for a couple of hours a day. Like, and it's I think it's become quite a sort of mystical, glamorized thing.
Sure.
But like, what do these people actually do?
Yeah, I would say, oh gosh, I'm definitely gonna like fail to remember the tagline appropriately, even though I just worked on the brand book. But yeah, for us, it's just like, it's digital nomads, it's like traveling entrepreneurs, but it's people from all backgrounds. There's something, no one really has defined what a startup house is, so we're trying to do that. But we're certainly not just for people who are like 100% actively working on startups right now. We kind of aim to be a gathering place for entrepreneurs. And there are people at so many different stages of their entrepreneurial journey, right? Whether those are people who are remote workers, that can be people who are freelancers and they're kind of like, they're their own bosses, but they're not necessarily building like companies. as well as people who are like exactly that. Like I am working on like a tech startup. I'm like gonna like do fundraising. I want to connect with a VC and like grow my team. And someday I'm gonna IPO. Like those people, we all want them to come through our doors. And in terms of kind of like the events and the meetups and the programming that we try to provide, we want to address people at different stages of that journey, you know, because I never saw myself like as an entrepreneur when I was younger. Even when I studied my master's, like the title of it was like an MSc in innovation, entrepreneurship, and management. Even at that stage, I didn't really self-identify. It wasn't until I was like fully doing it, I was like, oh, right, this is entrepreneurship. But I think I'm getting like distracted from the initial question that you asked. Would you please remind me what that was?
The original, good question. The original question was, yeah, just who do you kind of get through the door, I suppose, at
right.
Startup House?
And then we were talking about Instagramming and like, laptops on the beach kind of perception of digital nomads, right? Okay.
What's the reality?
Bring it all back. Well, in reality, I think there is plenty of Instagramming of like beautiful smoothie bowls and the like. Why not? I myself definitely, like, if I'm going somewhere beautiful, like I can't, and I've got my laptop with me, I will totally take that shot. But the reality is that you cannot fucking work with a laptop on the beach because the glare is terrible and you get hot. So no one's actually doing that for real. You want to be somewhere in the shade, preferably with air conditioning. You want to see that outside looks tropical and balmy and warm, but no, you want to be air conditioned so you can actually get your shit done. I do think that there's a glamorization of the lifestyle. I think a lot of people sort of buy into it. They're attracted to it because they want to escape the 9 to 5. They want to live a life less ordinary. But then they don't really like, unless you have a job where you can work remotely and you've got like a contract and like full-time employment, like it's really hard because you've got to, if you're a freelancer, then you've got to be hustling to like find clients and manage projects. And if you are, trying to build a business, like you're trying to build a business away from the place where you have a network and a support system. And sometimes, like the legal right to like live, you have to like, be doing border runs while you're also trying to like get a business off the ground. It's very challenging. And I think that's the side that people don't necessarily talk about because it's not glamorous. Like entrepreneurship is like, it's so sexy right now, but it's really fucking hard. And people don't always talk about the sucky, hard part of it. Like, we talk about like failure, but like people don't really feel comfortable talking about how much they failed until they've become really successful, right? Because it's like it doesn't look good. Who wants to out themselves as that? But it can be a real struggle, before I connected with Draper Startup House, I was freelancing for 3 years, and every time I thought to myself, like, I finally made it. I figured it out. I've got a couple good clients. I've got a solid income now. Something would happen, like my client would leave, a project would just like go kaput, like something in my personal life would just change. And I was like, oh, okay, now I'm broke again, like back to figuring out what I'm going to do to, live and feed my cats.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's it's interesting. Like, is there anything that you guys kind of do to look to support people that are having to deal with all these things like borders and visas and, maybe like a lack of community because they've maybe just come over from somewhere else and they kind of don't know anyone and don't know where to start? Like, how do you support them?
Yeah, I think the last thing that you touched on, loneliness is kind of like the hidden dark side of the digital nomad community. I think it's the thing that people find the most challenging, like long term. Like, what do you do if you're moving around and like you're constantly leaving the people you fall in love with? It's like, it's hard. And again, if you're building a business, like having a network and having a community of support is so can be so critical to your success. So I think bringing people together is like the biggest thing. I think that's like the whole idea behind it, is we want to like connect people. We want to bring people together. I think a lot of people think of co-working spaces as being like the heart of a startup ecosystem, but we kind of believe that, you know, it's when people hang out around the water cooler. It's when people go out to lunch together. It's when like you are sort of like going out for drinks after work. That's when kind of like the magic happens. That's when you like actually meet with someone and talk about an idea, and now all of a sudden they're your co-founder, you know, like those are the opportunities that we're trying to create. But just from a purely like functional side as well, it's like, you know, hostels are great for meeting people, but they're not great for working out of. You know, there's not really, the space isn't set up for that. Like, you know, you get older and you can't really just like sit on a beanbag chair for hours and still like be functional and like not break your back, you know. At a certain point, you just really want like a good chair and a desk, and to know that the Wi-Fi isn't going to cut out. If you're taking your business on the road, you kind of just want to be assured of that. And so that's something that we can like maintain for our customers, is like, hey, we get what you're doing. Like, you can come stay with us. We are here to like provide the events so you can meet people when you want to, but we also have functional workspace for when it's time to get shit done.
Yeah, nice. And it's obviously like a growing problem that you're solving. You know, there's a growing number of people that are looking for this kind of lifestyle and like what you're doing. Where do you see the future of work, of digital nomading and all of that kind of stuff going?
Well, I think the fact that you have businesses like, you know, like your business and our business, and you know, things like Selena popping up, kind of it, you know, the fact that we can build businesses based off of people adopting this lifestyle, I think tells you where it's at. This is a trend that's actually kind of, you know, it used to just be people who were doing this entirely on their own, you know, very intrepid travelers who didn't have a problem like landing in a country where they didn't speak the language. They could figure it all out on their own, and they were willing to like hack it together to like create a solution. They're very scrappy people. But I think it's like, you know, as more people sort of take on this road, we're, I think, maybe starting to like find that inflection point where it actually becomes like a more of like a mass market kind of thing. And if you look at how something like, you know, like COVID has really pushed work from home, you know, it's you know, not that many steps to have a work from home policy than it is to have like a remote work policy, because truly, besides time zone and being able to like communicate with people, like what's, you know, what's really stopping you from like letting your employees go like be adults and manage their own time. So I think we'll see more and more people sort of following this path, because I think, you know, as a generation, we're also very aspirational. I think we are exceptionally, like, those of us who can work online, who work in the tech and startup world, are exceptionally privileged. You know, we either have the education and the skills to do this, or we have had the experience, like we've earned the skills to be able to make a career at this. And that gives us so much freedom. We can design our own lifestyles. We know that we can like earn money from anywhere. And so it's not just about like, okay, can I make money? Can I like survive? Can I give myself a decent life? It's just like, no, I want to be the happiest, most fulfilled version of myself that I can be. And that means like traveling and like having new experiences. And so, you know, I think it's easy to see why like people aspire to this, and like it seems so attractive. And I think it's very exciting, the more people who can do this. You know, at what point does like the demographic profile of the digital nomad shift, you know, where it's not like so many like Americans and Europeans, but we start to see this diversifying, you know, because there's so many people who can like gain the skills to work online. And you know, when you can see someone, you know, at what point does like a destination like Thailand or Bali or the Philippines become like a net exporter of digital nomads? You know what I mean?
Yeah. What do you think, like, what does mass market look like for these kind of people? Like, because I mean, that could, you know, I think we get brought up to, especially, you know, in like the UK and the US as well, like, you know, you get brought up thinking, right, you've got to go to school, go to university, get your graduate job, climb up the career ladder, settle down, have a family, live, you know, wherever for the rest of your life. And obviously this is kind of giving people so much more freedom in a sense that, you know, they can travel the world, they can still work, you know, they can do this, that, and the other. Like, what do you think that's going to look like as a generation if we're more of us are moving away from that kind of traditional lifestyle into digital nomadism?
Yeah, well, I think our babies are going to start looking very different. You know, like we're just going to be all over the place. We're going to be falling in love with people from like the other side of the world. Yeah, I mean, I think for the next generation, hopefully they can enjoy this freedom. I mean, I kind of hope that we're moving to a world with like fewer borders, where like the nation state becomes like less relevant. Because I think you know, one of the big challenges for nomads to manage is like having a visa and like being able to like, you know, live and work somewhere long enough to like sort of maintain like a stable life. And you know, we're seeing countries like Estonia make like really like legit like solid moves to trying to like cater to this challenge like very specifically. And like in Thailand, we're like trying to do our own advocacy to like push for this with limited success sometimes. We'll sort of see. But you know, I would hope that like if we do see success stories, you know, if we can see that, hey, like digital nomads aren't just like bums with backpackers. These aren't people who are like quitters who couldn't hack it at home. And so they're trying to like pretend like they have a life somewhere going on somewhere else in the world. Like, sure, there's people like that. But like, so like, oh no, these are professionals. These are people who are like building businesses, who are working on really cool tech, who like, you know, can create something. The more that we have these stories to show, the more people can sort of see like this doesn't have to be a huge fringe thing. This, you know, people can see those living this lifestyle who they can identify with, which is where I think, you know, like, you know, platforms like this and like having these kinds of interviews and like telling these stories can be like so interesting. Yeah, so that someone who's like terrified that their parents like who've like invested in like sending them to like great schools and was like, hey, mom and dad, I'm gonna like, you know, book a one-way flight, thanks for this like shiny new laptop piece, who they're worried like, oh my god, my, you know, family's gonna disown me, they're gonna think I'm throwing away everything they've like tried to build for me. It's like, no, like you can actually like, you know, be a functional adult, like, you know, be doing good things for the world and be living this lifestyle. It's not just like a weird like, you know, sort of anti-social movement or something.
Yeah. What's your opinion on the kind of barriers that are stopping people that maybe want to do it at the moment? Because I know, like, we know that, you know, people who are unhappy in their current kind of, you know, life careers, typically they want to find things that are more purposeful, and they want to find things that give them more autonomy and freedom. And obviously this is kind of a huge way to get that autonomy and freedom in what you're doing. But for someone that's sat there in like a corporate, maybe they, you know, they went to university, they got their kind of corporate job, they're climbing up the ladder, and that's the comfort zone, but they know deep down that they want to go and do something like this. Is it like do you think it's a mindset thing? Is it skills in terms of like needing to know kind of digital startup-y skills? Like, what are the barriers, and where can people to start to overcome those barriers, you think?
Well, I think the type of person that you're describing, like, you know, someone who has training, who has experience, who has worked before, who's like picked up skills, I think for them, you know, if they can sort of do a skills assessment and like educate themselves about like, okay, this is what I can do, this is what I can teach myself, this is what I can learn quickly, how does that equal money, and how does that equal a business? How does that equal a revenue stream? You know, because for everyone that picture is going to be so different. Anytime I see like people in like digital nomad groups, and it's like a recent college grad, and they're like, oh, I really want to try this lifestyle, or someone who's like even in high school, I'm just like, oh my God, I'm terrified for this person, because you need skills, you know, like how are you going to make money? Money requires skills. Experience really helps. Network like really makes a big impact, right? But yeah, no, do an assessment, like how do you make money? Start trying your hand at these things, and figure out like how to make that into something sustainable, so that you can sort of, and also figure out what kind of life you do want for yourself, you know, because I think a lot of people sort of set out maybe to like, they want something different. And so they just like, they want to like cut ties. They want to like, you know, get rid of their apartments, sell their stuff, and just like go whole hog for this, because otherwise they're worried that they'll be like chicken shit and they'll quit and like go back to the bad thing. But they want to like run away from the career that makes them feel trapped. And like, I get it. It makes sense. But also like, you know, like, I think it's smart to figure out what it is you want out of it, you know, rather than just run away to try to figure it out. Because it's really challenging to sort of, I think, no, I meet people sometimes, and I've sort of realized they're at this point where like they traveled, they ran away from their life, but now like they are catching up to themselves. They're realizing that whatever it was that they thought they were running away from, like, is actually that like, no, that shit that they're still carrying around inside themselves. That like, oh, maybe, you know, becoming a digital nomad wasn't what they needed. Maybe just like going to therapy could have been like a good option too. Because figure out how you're going to make money, know what your reasons are for doing it, to sort of like know that, so that you can make the right decisions for yourself. I
think that's so important, like knowing, not just running away from what's making you unhappy. Like something that we talked about in a recent workshop was, you know, when you're looking at career change, you know, you might be running away from something that you don't enjoy. That's fine, totally get it. But you need to know where you're running to, because if you're just running away from something, you need to know where you're going. Otherwise, you're just going to be running into the middle of nowhere, and you're just going to end up lost. And just
you have no direction.
Exactly. So, and that's like why, we like part of our whole programs are basically based on like actually understanding like what needs you have, like not just in terms of like, you know, what jobs you might want or something like that, but like what needs you have in terms of the kind of lifestyle that you want, like, and then, you know, helping you to find that direction. So you're not just kind of like blindly running away from whatever it is that you're running away from, you know.
Last year I read The One Thing, and that book is all about like figuring out where you want to go and like create your plan, like working backwards from there. And I am so about that, because even if you don't know how you're going to get there, but if you know what you want, then that can be how you make decisions, you know, when an opportunity comes by, when you're trying to decide, do I want to travel to this place or that place? Do I want to sign up for this course? Do I want to try this like business opportunity? You know, do I want to take a job with this client or not? Like, if you can like look at that opportunity, be like, okay, does this help me get to like my end goal, like in any way, shape or form? And like, you have that rubric to guide you, rather than sort of just like wandering through, which, you know, sometimes you just need to wander. Sometimes there's like way too much going on and you just need to like get away and like be a mess for a bit. That's fine too. Just not recommended to do that for a long time.
No, I think you definitely have to go through phases of kind of like, you know, you have that kind of internal compass of like, I know what I want to be doing is like somewhere in that direction, and then you obviously have to wander a little bit to sort of find your way there. For sure. So interesting. Talk to me a bit about the kind of like mindset side of things as well, because I know when we kind of spoke before, you mentioned about, you know, you're in a big phase of like leveling up.
For sure.
What does that mean?
So I think mindset is extremely important. So I think it's behind you because I just lent it to a friend. But I'm a big I love The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. For me, it was like a big turning point in my life book. And Mark Manson started out as like a relationship coach. That's like he gave dating advice, and I think he is incredibly wise to sort of point out that like the only good dating advice that anyone can give you that isn't someone trying to sell you shit is basically the only true dating advice is self-work, is self-improvement. And so I think if you can apply that to business as well, if you're not finding the opportunities that like you really want, like you can't control the world, you can do your best to open yourself up to opportunities. But if you're trying to get here and you're just like constantly failing, then like figure out how you need to work on yourself so that like these things will be a match, so that like this opportunity will come your way and things can just like hit it off. So is it your skills? Is it your network? Or even is it just like you? Like, do you not like love yourself enough? Do you like just have self-doubt? Are you like dealing with like demons that are constantly like pulling you back? Like sometimes it's those kind of things that you need to address. I feel so lucky to be where I am now, but I know that I only got here because I did the work. I really figured out like, okay, if I keep finding myself in like shitty situations where I don't like feel like I've got a good boss, like how am I contributing to that? Like it's a difference between like responsibility and blame, right? Sometimes like you end up with like a bad deal, and it can feel good to like make it someone else's fault, but like that's extremely disempowering, like in the long term, like if like the more you can do to turn a raw deal into a good deal, to like find that like bit of silver lining, okay, like how can this help me to grow, or what can I take away from this so that next time this thing doesn't happen. I am so like right now I am in this really great women's mastermind that a really good friend of mine set up, which has been like a wonderful support tool. And I've actually been working with a coach, which is kind of new for me. I don't know, there's like a lot of kind of like charlatans, like self-proclaimed like life coaches in the digital nomad world. And I just like, there's a lot of like not good people doing that. And so I was always very wary. But somebody that I had met through the networking events I was hosting, and she needed a website, and I was like, okay, like I want to try this coaching thing because I'm not getting where I want to be. Maybe it's me. Maybe this is what I need, someone to like help me do this work. And so we did a skills trade, and it couldn't have come at like a better time because I've been really stepping up now. I've been freelancing for the last 3 years, and now I'm like the Thailand country manager and like the top decision maker for like budgets and like hiring. I'm like managing a team of contractors, like doing renovations on a building. I'm like planning all the marketing behind that. I'm doing the biz dev. Like I have to be the boss now. And I'm so glad that I invested in this for myself because the coach has been like really great to work with. She's really good at holding space for me, and it's been a really interesting sort of figuring out what's holding me back. And I think this is the thing that a lot of women entrepreneurs and just women in general, I think, can resonate with. I'm realizing that a lot of the things that make my personal life and my professional life so difficult is that I never feel like I'm enough. I always feel like I have to like work 200% harder than everyone else, have to constantly prove myself. I need to be perfect. I've also got to be like completely switched on. And like, it keeps me from being able to like let go, to like rest properly. And so I've had a lot of these like really, really big moments lately of just like, oh, like it's like the self-work that has been like really, really, just like really interesting to sort of see how much like I'm moving through my world with like such greater ease. My relationship is like my relationship with like my boyfriend as well as with my friends feel like they're in a better flow. I feel like I can be a better manager. And just like I'm making better decisions and I'm more productive because I'm working on getting rid of all of this like emotional baggage, all these like horrible things that my brain was like saying to myself, which were really not helpful, you know?
Yeah, no, I can definitely sympathize. To recommend you a book actually, on the subject of kind of, you know, perfectionism and like feeling like you have to do like 200% and, you know, you can't switch off and all that kind of stuff. The Imposter Cure by Dr. Jessamy, can't remember her second name.
I'll Google it. I'm really good at Googling things.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Yay!
Yeah, it's honestly, it's a brilliant book. Yeah, it's really, really good. Like, it's really cool. You can kind of like identify different forms of like imposter syndrome, and it talks about like like things that kind of like help you get. I love stuff like that. So yeah, would definitely recommend. I think what's interesting is I think it takes quite a sort of self-aware person to have that kind of moment of, oh, I need to work on X, Y, and Z, or, you know, maybe I need to find a coach, or maybe I need to look for help. Like, how do you kind of cultivate that sense of the self-awareness to then work on yourself? Because I think maybe a lot of people go through life thinking, oh, this is just what life is like and this is the status quo.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I just wonder how more people can understand, like, you know, if you work on yourself, you don't have to live with this like imposter syndrome or perfectionism and stuff like that, you know?
I mean, I can only speak for myself, but for me, I think it was like, you know, it was a very slow, you know, it was a very slow series of steps and escalations that took me to like, oh, I'm ready to work with a mindset coach to transform my mindset and unlock my potential. But I think I've always been very ambitious, and I've always felt kind of like thwarted by my situation. I just felt like I could do so much more if only someone would give me the chance. But it's kind of that thing I was describing earlier, just like I was not matching the level that I wanted to be at. And yeah, like when I was like working in New York and I burnt out, like I like really considered therapy at that time because I just didn't really know how to like cope. And I finally was just like, you know what, I just need to leave this job because this is a toxic environment. It's not good for me. But the legal tech job that I got after that, the remote position, I was actually working for my cousin's company. And, you know, the job that I left in New York, I could just place the blame on just like a bad manager and just be like, well, you know, I just don't think she's like a really good person. I don't agree with the way she makes decisions, and this is just not the company for me. But when I was working for her, you know, this is my cousin who was like my best friend as well, and like someone I like love deeply and admire. And sort of my brain was sort of put in this conundrum. It's like, oh, well, like I am mad about things at my work, but my manager is not a complete asshole. So how do I like resolve these things? And so it was kind of like a push for me to like be more self-reflective in that moment. But I think I kind of like around that same time had started like sort of educating myself about the language of like boundaries and why they're important. And then, you know, shortly after that, like, you know, the subtle art of not giving a fuck came into my life. And I think that was a big push towards like, you know, self-improvement as well. And then I think in Chiang Mai, there is a very open culture for this. I think it comes because there are so many people who are sort of like looking for something new. And so there's a lot of openness towards this. We also have a very like a strong like community of like spirituality and mindfulness, people who do meditation retreats and yoga, you know. So we're all kind of like talking about this lingo. I like so many of the people I know are working on themselves, are like actively working on themselves. And so it's something that's like been nice that it's been normalized. And yeah, like I, you know, joining like a women's sharing circle, it was a thing I did like weekly. And at first I showed up because like my friend was setting it up and I was like, okay, well, I want to support her. But she sort of like built it out of like a sort of like group therapy principles. And yeah, this is my bestie, Brittany Bond. Like she's like I joined her women's sharing circle, I guess now like 2 almost 3 years ago maybe. And this is actually something she's like developed that she's like turning into like a something that she can do to like support women entrepreneurs. So it's like I've like watched her grow and I've seen how it's helped me. So it's been really interesting to see that. But yeah, I realized how helpful it was for me to like have this space and to be interested in exploring that with more intention, and to see the value in things like mastermind groups and sharing circles, and to seek out those experiences and people who want to be pushing themselves in the same way to grow.
Yeah, definitely. Like we actually did a workshop last week on kind of like goal setting and habits and stuff like that. And like one of the main things that we kind of took away was, yeah, like the environment that you surround yourself with and the people that you surround yourself with is so much more important than just being motivated, because you're not always going to be motivated, right? But if you are surrounded by people who have the same kind of habits and goals and things that you're chasing as well, then it becomes just 1,000 times easier to actually do it. Like there's no point in trying to like work really hard and start a company if all of your friends are like, I don't know, like crazy party people who are like not working at all and stuff like that.
I think that's like a reason, that is a good reason to like remove yourself from your physical environment, right? Like, because like if all the people that you're spending your time with like all have jobs and are doing the same thing and you want to do something wildly different, like even in your casual conversations, like and you're talking to them, you're just like, they're not going to be like leveling with you, you'll constantly feel like the outsider, and I think you end up like sort of suppressing those urges. Whereas if you're around people who like get what you're doing and can add to that, that's like, there are all these kind of just like soft moments, these like passive moments for like growth and learning. It all can happen so organically, and I think that's like, so like this like going back, I think that's what we're both like really like in the business of doing. We believe in the power of that, of your community, right? Really intentionally putting yourself in the right community to take you to where you want to go.
Yeah, big time. So talking about leveling up, so what is next for Lily?
Woo. I think right now I am working a lot into like growing into like being a boss, like, oh, people need answers from me. People are like relying on me for leadership. I've been in managerial positions before, but there was always someone above me. And with my role, I have a lot of autonomy, like I don't need to pass my decisions by a whole bunch of people. I get to be the boss for all intents and purposes. And so it's coming to terms with like what my job description is, and like I was saying, like not feeling guilty so much, not letting my decisions be driven from feeling guilty, because like sometimes I'm just like, oh, like I just really want to take a break right now, like it's been a really rough day, and I feel it, and I would feel like I couldn't, but I was like, wait, my job is not to like, I'm no longer like doing copywriting or web development for a client. My job is to like make this business happen. And if I'm too stressed out to like pay attention or focus, like that's bad for the business. I can't show up for people if I'm not my best self. So actually the best thing that I can do for the business right now, if no one needs me, if I don't have to cancel any appointments, if things are still going to get done on time, then like I should just leave work early and go for that fucking walk, that's a real shift. That's like sort of what I'm trying to like adjust to right now is, and also sort of figuring out how to like, I know so many people on like my same level, but I'm realizing like, I don't know how many people I have who are role models, like I feel so like lucky that I found this job that feels like it was like made for me. It's exactly where I want to be at this phase of my life. But, I thought I would be in this position to like be able to like launch a co-living co-working space in a couple of years. And so now that I find myself here kind of ahead of schedule, I'm like, oh, well, who's my role model? What's the next thing that I'm working towards? And so someone kindly connected with me recently with like a potential mentor, and I'm kind of like, oh yeah, she a badass. Okay, let's like spend some time with her and start like thinking about, you know, how the way I behave and the way how I make decisions and how I present myself, like, okay, what could be next for me, and what do I do now to start preparing myself for that next phase, besides all of like the learning and the challenges I'm going through now, the very practical skills that I'm like gaining. How do I need to think about that?
Yeah, how do you go about finding, you know, someone to mentor? Because it's something that a lot of people talk about, but I think actually practically going, you know, if I sit down and be like, right, I want to go and find myself a mentor, where do you, I don't know, how do you start? Does it have to be like a little bit of serendipity, do you think?
I think there is some serendipity to it, because I wouldn't say that I'm particularly good at this, really. I've certainly seen people that I thought could be my mentors, but just their commitment to me wasn't necessarily a match for what I was looking for. And maybe it could have been, but I was just too afraid to ask. But it's like, it's hard, you know, I want to be respectful. I'm just like, okay, this person seems like they've got a lot on their plate. Like, I don't want to like burden them, but then I'm cutting myself out of something maybe they would be totally willing. So, I mean, that's something I still need to work on. But I think, but then I see people who are, you know, a little less courteous than me, and just like, they're just brassy enough to just be like, hey, be my mentor. Like, I will demand your time. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, they're making it work. I think it is kind of that. It's like being like, if you find the person, then just be brave enough to like be demanding of their time, because I think then that's the only way you get it.
If you don't ask, you don't get.
and if they say no, like, then, you know, you have your answer, but like, and that's too bad. Find the next mentor, but they might say yes.
Yeah.
Just try asking.
So simple, but so difficult in practice.
Fucking terrifying.
Amazing. Well, on that note, I need to go and find myself a mentor. Just before we go, do you want to tell everyone how they can find out more about you, connect with you, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so draperstartuphouse.com. Find out all of our company and our amazing team and our spaces around the world. You can hit me up at just Lily at draperstartuphouse.com. I'm still managing to maintain pretty inbox zero these days, getting to all of my contacts. I'm not quite that top boss bitch busy yet.
How do you do that? How do you do that?
Just it's OCD. It's just pure OCD. Like, it's how I cope with like managing things. Is keeping that in a good place. But yeah, check us out. My team, I'm training my community managers to be on our Facebook. So, you know, do give us a like and encourage them. They're working really hard. And yeah, you can also connect with me at, this is a side project I like hope to bring back when I have a little more time, is at startupchiangmai.com.
Amazing. And I would highly recommend following Work vs. Cats.
Yes, Work vs. Cats. I will get to work posting some fresh content on there just for you, Katie.
Yes. I set up my little puppy with an Instagram account so we can be like cat and puppy.
Oh yeah, we can send each other stories.
That's so cute. Amazing. Well, thank you for being such a wonderful guest. And yeah, hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Thank you so much, Katie. It was really great connecting with you guys again.
Thanks for listening. All the resources mentioned are in the show notes if you want to have a look. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to us if you are able to support by giving us a quick rating to help more people find us. It takes less than 5 seconds and really means a lot. Next week, we chat to Sondre Rash, co-founder and CEO of Safety Wing, a Y Combinator startup providing insurance for digital nomads. We'll be digging into his entrepreneurial journey, growing Safety Wing, how they manage working remotely as a team, and loads more. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss it. See you next time.